Hello, everybody. Hi, hi. Just want to welcome everybody in. I'm going to give everyone some time to get settled. I'm looking forward to chatting with all of you, and thanks for tuning in. I'm going to introduce myself in just a moment. Just want to give everybody an opportunity to join this Facebook Live. It's going to be an exciting conversation. There's lots to discuss. Adrenal fatigue and how our adrenals are working is obviously a really big topic. Stress is something that impacts all of us. And I know there's a ton of interest in this. So just want to give a little bit of time so that everybody has a chance to join this conversation. And just so everybody's aware, this is being recorded. So I believe that Nature's Fair is going to post this on their Facebook page afterwards. So if you can't stay for the entire length or you have to step away for a moment, no worries. This is going to be recorded and you'll be able to take advantage of this in the future and catch up on anything that you may have missed. I see a lot of people joining in already, which is fantastic. I'd love to know where some of you might be joining in from. So if you want to just drop into the chat where you're actually tuning in from, that would be fantastic. Myself, I'm actually in North Vancouver. It's sunny over here. It's a beautiful evening. And I look forward to spending the next half hour with all of you. All right. So I just want to introduce myself first off. Since I've welcomed all of you and people are continuing to join, my name is Chelsea Colle. I'm a certified nutritional practitioner. I have my own nutrition practice as well as being part of the Jameson Wellness Education team. And I'm so glad that you could take a little bit of time to join me so that we can learn about this very important topic of stress and adrenal fatigue. And I just want to say thank you so much to Nature's Fair for letting me join in and be a part of this important conversation. I really hope that you can take a lot away from this. I think that now more than ever, this is an important topic. I think that people are really dealing with stress in a way that we haven't before. I mean, we obviously know what's happening around the world, along with just having regular everyday stressors. And this all has a really big impact on our overall health. And for me personally, I come from a place of really understanding what happens when you get burnt out and you become really fatigued and your adrenals are exhausted, because I've experienced this myself. So that's why I'm super passionate about sharing regarding this topic, because I myself have experienced that. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my journey with adrenal fatigue, since it is really helpful to be able to share what I've experienced, and then for you to be able to relate to that. I think that um, hopefully you'll recognize a lot of what I'm saying and pick up on some things that might be cues for you if that's something that you're experiencing for yourself right now. So I used to have a very stressful job, my previous career. I was chronically stressed, chronically sleep deprived, and just constantly working and wasn't really able to give myself a break. And I started to notice that I was constantly tired, that I wasn't able to concentrate as well, that I was just really struggling. My sleep was starting to get significantly impacted, and I was already not a great sleeper. So this just made life even harder. And it was starting to impact my appetite and my interest in being able to do things like socialize and just enjoy time with people outside of work. So it was really having a huge effect on my life. And it wasn't until I've actually stepped away that I was able to fully recognize just how much that stress was impacting my health. And by looking at not only what some of those symptoms were, but also addressing that by consulting with a naturopathic doctor, and then bringing in some really key supplemental support and lifestyle changes, I was able to come back from that really difficult time in my life and that struggle. So I don't know if any of that resonates with you, but that's certainly what some of my experience has been. And I hope that will help you to understand a little bit more, but if that's something that you're going through as well. So I just want to start off first before I get really far into some of the discussion about adrenal fatigue and stress and all the impacts it can have on our body and other hormones, is just to share that throughout this, I want you to feel free to pop questions into the chat. I'll try to answer those as they come through. And then I'll certainly leave a little bit of time at the end so we can discuss things. Um, and I've got about half an hour. If we go over time, that's perfectly okay, but I certainly want to respect all of your time today if you've got other things that you have to run off to. I just appreciate that you want to join me today. So stress. This is something that is huge. We know that it has major impacts on us. We see this every day, and certainly stress is something that is a normal occurrence. And having some stressors in our life isn't necessarily going to be a big deal. What's problematic is when it gets to an extreme where either it's happening all the time, every single day for a longer period, or it's really extreme periods of stress. So it could be really intense and short, or it could be something that's happening for a much longer period of time. But both of those are going to have a really negative impact on us. And not all stress is bad. So, like I said, we have stressors in our everyday life. And stress plays an important role in our body because if we didn't have a stress response, then we likely might not survive because our innate response to respond to stress is actually helping us to protect ourselves from harm. But when our body can't distinguish from an actual harmful event or something that's happening that could actually cause physical harm to us, when it's more of a psychological stressor that is more perceived than it is an actual stress, that's where we see a lot of this chronic stress coming in. So we certainly aren't getting attacked by a bear or having to run away from a freight train or something like that in our everyday life. It's not a daily occurrence, but we do have a lot of chronic stresses that can build up over time and have a lot of really negative effects. So you heard me describe some of the things that I've experienced personally that were part of that stress response when it was that chronic stress. So I was having difficulty sleeping. I was fatigued all the time. I couldn't concentrate in the same way. I didn't have the same interest in activities. Some people also experience weight changes, so weight gain, and a lot of cravings for different foods that maybe they didn't have cravings for before. There's so many ways that our body can be negatively impacted by stress and some of the signs that creep up. So, those are a few of the telltale signs. In addition, people that are getting a lot of high headaches or migraines, people that are having gastrointestinal issues. So noticing that there's a lot of changes in your digestion. Things aren't working quite the same way. Maybe you are starting to feel heartburn more often, or you're having problems going to the bathroom, or you're having nervous diarrhea. You know, there can be a lot of different ways that can impact different individuals. So this is where it's really important to key into some of those signs as a clue that maybe something isn't quite right. Now, our stress response, as I mentioned, is something that's really important for our body because it's a protective mechanism. The way it works is that our adrenal glands are actually secreting our stress hormone cortisol. And there's a connection between our adrenals and our pituitary and our hypothalamus. So the pituitary and the hypothalamus are both in the center of our brain. And that's where they're starting to communicate how different hormones should be produced. And if everything's working properly, once that stressful event has taken place and everything's been resolved, then the signals stop to go back up to the brain. So that negative feedback loop closes off and we don't have more release of cortisol. But when that loop kind of gets broken or disrupted, those signals aren't getting sent through, so our body's just continuing to release this cortisol. And obviously, we know some of the negative effects that it can have on us because of some of those symptoms, but it also can really impact other parts of our body and other hormone producing organs. So, one of those being our thyroid. So, there's a really direct connection between how our adrenals are functioning and our cortisol release from stress, and then how that impacts our thyroid. So if we're in a chronically stressed state of living, what's happening is that our thyroid isn't going to be able to function the way that it needs to. So, stress has a direct impact on how our thyroid functions and the hormones that it's producing. So, if we aren't getting our thyroid producing the hormones that it needs to in order to maintain a lot of our base metabolic functions, then we're going to see a lot of other health issues crop up. And not coincidentally, a lot of these overlap. So, some of the symptoms that you experience with chronic stress and adrenal fatigue, like I've mentioned, are also similar symptoms to what you experience when your thyroid is not functioning properly. So, it's underfunctioning or you have a low thyroid. So, some of those symptoms may include tiredness. So, not surprising, you may feel tired again. You might notice some of those same gastrointestinal issues, particularly constipation. There's also just a lack of interest that kind of ties into feeling really fatigued all the time. You might even be more forgetful. And one really, or I guess two really big signs of an underfunctioning thyroid is changes with your hair, your skin, and your nails. So everything might be drier and a lot more coarse. You might notice that your nails are really brittle and they're cracking, and you might see that your hair is thinning or you're even experiencing hair loss. In addition to that, you might actually notice that you've gained some weight. And again, this is because our thyroid is so important for controlling our metabolism. And on top of that, you might notice that you feel intolerant to cold. So you're just like cold all the time. And again, this relates back to the fact that our thyroid is really important and integral in maintaining our body temperature. So if it's not working properly, if it's not sending those hormones and those signals to other parts of our body, then things are just going to go out of balance. And that's certainly creating a lot of other potential health issues. So, with cortisol specifically and an excess production of it and feeling chronically stressed, some major disorders that can result are adrenal fatigue, like I mentioned, and we've been discussing and I've described, as well as the HPA axis dysfunction, which was that disconnect in that loop when that stops working, as well as feeling excessively worried or nervous. So these are things that we might experience time to time, but when it becomes something that's happening all the time, that could be a sign that maybe something's not quite right. Digestive issues, as I mentioned, could be another area where you never had those issues before, and now they're starting to happen a lot more often. Sleep issues, so this is something that I've certainly dealt with and continue to have to work on. So that is something that can also be really prevalent, along with immune system issues. So your immune system being really low, getting colds and flus and other conditions a lot more often. It can really just push into a whole other different part of your body. So there's a lot of things that can kind of create this cascade or a downward effect. So if we're not looking at controlling our stress response first and taking care of our thyroid, then that's just going to create a whole host of other issues within our body. And certainly it causes that downstream effect for other hormones. And I know if there were some of you viewers that were listening in on some of the conversations that were had in May, there was that whole hormone series. So hopefully you got some learning for that. And that's certainly an area where we want to protect by managing these hormones, our stress response in particular. So, what are some of the solutions? So, we've talked a lot about what some of the problems are, what it's looking like in our body, what some of the signs are of adrenal fatigue, HPA axis dysfunction, and low thyroid. But what can you do about it? So, if this is something that you think that you're dealing with, first off, I would certainly recommend that you take account of what you're feeling in your body, take note of these things that have changed. and make sure that you're working with a healthcare practitioner. I think that's really important so that you can really get to the root of what the issue might be. And to get a little bit more guidance, you can have a lot of testing that's done, and that will help to really narrow in on what exactly some of the problems are and how best to address them. But there are also a lot of really practical things that you can do to support your body from a nutrition, a supplemental, and an overall lifestyle perspective. So that's what I really want to chat with you about today. So first, I am curious if everyone is aware of what an adaptogen is. I know that's a word that has been moving around in the health and wellness world a lot for a number of years, but it's certainly a big buzzword right now. So adaptogens are herbs, so they're all plant-based constituents. So these plants are helping to actually modulate our stress response. So there's a whole bunch of different types of adaptogens, and they work in slightly different ways, but essentially what they're doing is they're helping to either upregulate or downregulate the activity of your adrenal system and support that stress response. So what are some examples of adaptogens? Well, the star, in my opinion, is ashwagandha. So that again is one that you may have heard about because it is one of the most popular in terms of helping to support the stress response. There's also schizandra berries, rhodiola, mushrooms. There's a number of different mushrooms. So medicinal mushrooms are also another really hot topic and something that people are really getting on board with a lot more. And those are all going to be really supportive and nourishing to help your adrenals to function more optimally. And some specific ways that adaptogens really help, including supporting our mental focus and stamina. They also help to relieve mental fatigue. So when you're feeling just really tired, your brain just doesn't seem to want to work, and this is where that can really help. They also are just supporting overall cognitive function, so helping your brain to even function better. They also have a physical effect, so they're supporting your physical stamina, so your ability to actually function better physically. And they can relieve the symptoms of stress itself. So some really important functions, and I highly recommend adaptogens as one way of supporting your stress response, whether you're experiencing moderate amounts of stress, but certainly if you feel like you fall into that adrenal fatigue category. There's also a number of nutrients that are going to be so nourishing for your body. So there's lots of foods out there. I'm certainly a fan as a nutritionist. I love talking about food. But when it comes to supporting your adrenals and your thyroid, there's some really key nutrients to keep in mind. So first off, healthy fats. So omegas are particularly helpful in helping to reduce some of that stress response, as well our brain and our cells, particularly cells that are producing hormones, need healthy fats in the form of phospholipids because they're actually helping to produce these hormones that have these fats in them. So some natural sources that you can get from the grocery store and incorporate into your diet include egg yolks, different meats, especially the livers of certain animals. And for anyone who's plant-based, nuts and seeds and legumes are all going to be high in some of these specific amino acids, particularly the amino acid serine. And the amino acid tyrosine is also really important, but for our thyroid function. So I would certainly recommend that you incorporate more proteins into your diet to get those amino acids and to get those healthy fats. And another big one is vitamin C. So I don't know if you're aware, but vitamin C is actually excreted through the stress response. So we know that vitamin C is something that we need every day, and it's a water soluble vitamin. So our body runs through it really quickly because it gets excreted within about 4 hours after your body has absorbed and then utilized it. So we need lots of vitamin C. And when we're stressed, we need even more of it. So incorporating vitamin C, both in the supplement form, but certainly also from some fresh fruits and veggies, is going to be really key. So what are some of the best sources of vitamin C? Well, certainly citrus fruits are really well known for their vitamin C content. Kiwi fruit, strawberries contain vitamin C. There's a lot of berries that also are rich in vitamin C, and things like peppers. So pepper is technically a fruit, not a vegetable, but there's just lots of different ways that you can incorporate vitamin C into your diet. And I also want to touch on a few key supplements. So I've talked a little bit about adaptogens, and Smart Solutions makes one product that is really fantastic in supporting our adrenal function. It's called AdrenaSmart. So this is combining 4 different adaptogens, so all plant-based, in order to help with that stress response. So it's a blend of those adaptogenic herbs that's really helping to nourish and support our body. So it's going to help with all of those same things that I talked about before that adaptogens support in terms of our mental stamina, our physical stamina, our cognitive function, and our body's response to stress. And if you think that you need some support with your thyroid, Smart Solutions also has a product called ThyroSmart. So ThyroSmart is a combination of some key nutrients. They're amino acids, vitamins, and minerals that are really helping your thyroid to function properly so that it can produce the thyroid hormones that are needed, as well as it to just function as it should. Um, and on top of all of this, so certainly food is a big part of living well, nourishing our body, and supporting it with supplements, and then also thinking about some practical elements. So, aside from making sure that you're eating that diet that's rich in some of those specific foods, just trying to be more whole in your food, so eating whole foods, um, less processed, ensuring that you're getting a rainbow of colors, and then considering how, so we're talking about stress, we obviously want to try to find ways of reducing our stress. So finding stress management techniques and ensuring that we're incorporating self-care practices. Now, I know that this is easier said than done. We only have so much time in a day, and I know that it can be difficult to try to add in all of these things at once. So I encourage you to just take your time and think about incorporating even just 1 or 2 small things into your routine, maybe sometime this week. Maybe it might even just be one, but think about a way in which you can try to reduce your stress. So it might be going for a walk, doing a meditation, playing a sport that you really enjoy. If you've got family members, spending some time with them, talking to a friend on the phone, um, enjoying a beautiful flower that you've seen when you've been out on your walk. There's so many different ways that we can take care of ourselves and incorporate that self-care and work on managing our stress. I know that we can't necessarily erase all the stresses in our life. Certainly some things we can try to actually remove that are causing stress, but some things can't necessarily do that. So I just encourage you to find ways that you can incorporate some of that. And another way, which is kind of tied into that self-care, is moving your body. So trying to move your body every day. So even though exercise is in itself its own form of stress, they can really help to reduce our stress levels because it is also a stress reducer. So by moving our body, we can actually rid the body and help our body to metabolize out and get rid of stress. So again, that might be a gentle walk for one person, or it might be a bit more of an intense HIIT type of exercise, or it could be some type of a group sport. But that also just has overall benefits, not just for our physical health and health and the stress that we're feeling physically, but also for our mental health and the stress that we're experiencing. As the statistics are really high right now in terms of how much Canadians are experiencing with stress. And, you know, we just need to do the little things that we can every day and find ways that we can incorporate some of these things. So I hope that this information has been helpful for you so far.